Hey guys, and welcome to another new car review. This is a very new car. It is the BMW iX. Yep, we are cruising electrically today. I think this is a statement that might come back to haunt me. The iX is the kind of car that might kill its petrol equivalent, which in BMW's case is the X5, within one generation. It's that good. It just simply is. The first time I saw the BMW iX on photos, I thought BMW had gone mad, like E65 7 Series Dame Edna mad. But the more time that I spend with it, the more I like it. And I'm not alone. I received a lot of very positive comments on this vehicle during my test period. It's got a lot of road presence, a lot of very nice details, including electronic handleless door handles. Now moving inside, the iX arguably gets even better. It's stunningly futuristic in here, with a nice big curved digital screen, very few physical buttons, and lovely materials. Now of course, because all the control functions are housed within the vast digital screen, it will take some time before you'll know exactly where to find everything. But the displays are crisp and clear, and the menu system can be easily changed just by dragging widgets to where you want them to be. Of course, there are various modes, including sport and efficiency, in addition to the standard setting, as is the case with all BMWs. And this particular test car had all the bells and whistles, including massaging front seats, which I really enjoyed. One of my most favorite features on the new BMW iX is the augmented reality navigation system. It may appear tad gimmicky at first, but the slick graphic overlays really do help to make the guidance being given more accurate and easy to see at a quick glance. And then there's the new My BMW app, which doesn't only show you valuable stuff like your remaining range, but now also includes a remote theft recorder. One of the many interior highlights for me is the iDrive control panel. This entire console is beautifully detailed with a lovely wood trim and a crystal finish. I really like the attention to detail and how BMW has integrated touch buttons into the wooden surface. It means that major functions fall easily to hand, particularly if your elbow is resting on the armrest. A major advantage of having the batteries mounted low and the absence of a transmission tunnel is that there is a lot of space in the cabin, particularly low down in the front of the cabin. Here you'll find a handy storage deck that includes your wireless charge pad, USB outlets and so on. Oh, and just look at the gorgeous upholstery and finish on these seats. Fancy, eh? Moving to the second row and seated behind my own driving position, there are acres of legroom and lots of headroom. And here's another example of some lovely attention to detail. Look at how BMW has hidden the Isofix child seat anchor points behind this neat flap. Whoa! Yeah, it's very fast, as you would expect. 385 kilowatts, 765 newton meters of torque is going to do that, even with a car that weighs 2.5 tons like this one. As with most EVs, the top speed is limited, in this case to 200 kilometers per hour, but that's not really a problem because, well, I mean, doing 200 is illegal in the first place, and secondly, we don't really have the Autobahn in South Africa, do we? So it's kind of pointless. Far more important is efficiency and range. Now the good news is we have, in real-world driving as a team, which is sort of a mix of city, town, highway driving, achieved 500 kilometers plus. So a consumption of around 21 kilowatts hour per 100 kilometers, which is really good. And so the claimed range is actually pretty accurate and in line with what BMW says. So you can do pretty decent distances in this car, and if you're going to be using it to go to the shops, go to the office, go to school every day, you probably only will need to charge it every like week and a half or so, you know, depending on what you do on the weekend. The downside of having such a big battery and such big range, besides obviously the cost of the car and the weight of the car, is that when you do need to charge it, you know, when it's almost flat to full, it does take a long time, and the availability of really high-speed chargers is still quite limited in South Africa. But I think the way that I see people using this car, the more likely scenario is that you're going to need top-ups. And for example, we pulled into a BMW charge station, a 50 kilowatt hour charge station with 14% battery power left, and 90 minutes later we were on 80%. So that's really good. Also, if you pull in and you only need like 100 kilometers of range, you will only have to wait like 20 minutes. So it's practical enough, I think, for real world application. And also keep in mind that in this sort of launch phase of the iX, BMW is throwing in a launch box, a wall box as part of the deal, which is great. So let's talk about ride and handling. It's not really something that you would expect to be a serious concern for somebody buying an EV, but this is a BMW. So, you know, your BMW aficionados will want it to drive and ride and feel like a BMW, and the good news is that it does. Steering is nicely weighted, it's got a nice meaty feel to it. Even the thickness of the rim of the steering wheel is typically BMW. And because all those heavy batteries sit really low down in the car, the center of gravity is really low. So it actually sits quite nicely in the corners. It's got great grip, obviously. It's got motors, it's got all-wheel drive. And then there's the ride, which is surprising to me. This is on 22-inch wheels, and it's got adaptive air suspension, and the ride is really supple, really very comfortable, and yet it also resists roll really well. So I think they've done a fantastic job in setting this car up. Just a quick mention on safety. Of course, the BMW iX did achieve a 5-star Euro NCAP crash test result, but more importantly, the components that make up the score were also very good. It scored 91% for adult occupant protection and 87% for child occupant protection. Now let's talk about pricing for a bit, because that's typically been a problem with EVs in this country. And don't get me wrong, at around 2.2 million Rand, this is a very expensive car, but somehow this feels closer to being worth 2.2 million Rand than any other EV that I've driven so far. I think it's a combination of factors, and I mean, I've mentioned all of them in this video already, so I'm not going to go through it, but I did an interesting little exercise where I put this car next to the BMW X5 M50i, which a couple of 100,000 Rand cheaper, but which lacks features that are standard on this car, and you know, there are features on this car that you can't even spec on an X5 even if you wanted to. So let's say you bring your X5 M50i up to this sort of general kind of spec level, the gap is really quite marginal, quite small. Power is very similar, torque is very similar, performance is very similar, 4.6 seconds 0 to 100 in this, 4.3 in the X5. Obviously top speed is a different story because this is limited to 100. And then in terms of, I think the driving experience in this, to me, is just a different level. It's next generation. It feels like the future. It feels great. Love the interior. Love the tech and the application of the tech. I think for once You know, BMW in the past, you know, with things like gesture control and things like that, been a bit gimmicky, but the tech in this car really seems to be much more well thought through. So I love the tech in this car. I love the design of this car. I like the look and the feel of it. The only areas where the X5 actually, I think, trumps this is in space. This is 150 liters smaller in the boot, and also a little bit smaller sort of in cabin volume. Although I would say in terms of rear legroom, this probably, I don't know, I think this is better. But the figures don't lie. And then in terms of, you know, the big thing is range. Now, ironically, perhaps, I think in the real world, the range capability of the two vehicles in the real world is actually quite similar. But the issue is, of course, that if you need to recharge this, if you've run it empty, it's going to take a good few hours if you can find a fast charging station. In your X5, you're going to stop at the nearest petrol station, you'll be out in 10 minutes. That's the difference. So it really comes down to what are you going to use the car for. I think we've become clever enough to realize that these cars are not made for traveling Cape Town to George and back the next day. These are cars for everyday city, town, back home kind of scenarios. And but with the extra range now, you'll charge far less frequently, and you do have the option of sort of extending your trips outside of town by a significant amount. So at the similar price right now, and given my usage patterns, I would take an iX over an X5 every day. In conclusion then, guys, I really can't give the iX xDrive50 anything less than 10 out of 10. It's that good. I'm even starting to like the looks. Really grown on me a lot. No, seriously, this is by far, I think, the best and most convincing from a purchasing proposition point of view EV that I've driven that's available in South Africa. For the first time, you have a 2.2 million rand, you know, decently sized SUV EV that kind of makes sense, that feels like you're getting value for your money. And you know, we live in a world where SUVs of this size, even petrol ones, premium badged ones, are pushing two bar anyway. So it still remains somewhat of a statement car, or a you know, early adopter kind of decision, but it's becoming very, very close to making very practical sense to me in my usage patterns, to have an EV like this. I like it a lot. Well done, BMW. If I had the money, I would be knocking on your door, but I don't, sadly. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments below whether you think the iX's score is a subscribe. Yeah, it can be a subscribe. Please subscribe. What I meant to say was a surprise, but maybe what I mean is subscribe. I've also got books to give away. You can find my email address in the About section of this channel, and pop me a mail, tell me whether you want it autographed or not, and I'll get it to you, free of charge, if you live in South Africa, of course. Thanks for watching. Cheers.